at him, son. You up? All right, don't freak out if something happens now. How's that coffee, Jordan?
That's good stuff, man. Yeah, it's nice.
Is coffee big in the old world?
Huge in the old world. Tea is still more popular, I'd say, but yeah, coffee's pretty popular now.
What's your favorite tea? Or do you drink tea?
I'm not a massive tea drinker. My sister's there off to the side. She's a huge tea drinker. What would be the best tea? Yorkshire tea. Yorkshire tea bag. Yeah, just standard.
Do you drink it in the morning or like?
It's a morning thing, but
okay.
I think a proper tea drinker drinks throughout the day, right? Yeah, you're talking like 10 cups a day.
Whoa, dang.
Any moment, yeah.
10 cups. Is it caffeinated?
Yeah. No, that's caffeinated, yeah.
It is caffeinated.
That is caffeinated, yeah.
Did you know that, Chill?
I didn't. Well, I just want to establish, when you say the old world, what are we talking about?
We're talking about England.
Oh, okay. England.
Yeah, that's the old
heard
world,
of it.
man. That's where most of us came from.
I've heard of it.
We had a war.
I gotta be from England.
We had a war with them at one point.
I've been told twice today already.
Yeah.
We lost. We lost.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Man, we have got a special guest in here for you guys today, Jordan Mulligan from the Mulligan Brothers. You do a lot of stuff, Jordan, and we're going to get into kind of your story and some of the cool stuff you've done in the interview. And we also have Jordan's sister, Neve. Not a common name around here.
No, that's an
but it's
Irish.
common where you guys.
Yeah, it's an Irish name. Yeah, so we're Mulligan Irish family from England, but Irish roots. And yeah, Neve is a name that still catches people in the UK off guard, but in America seems to be a big issue. You go to Starbucks and get Neve on a cup; it's not spelt the right way. So
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Well, because it's got an M and an H in it.
it's got an I, an A, an M, an H.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty.
It doesn't have a V.
No, there's no V. There's no
Yeah.
E. Yeah.
We're real dumb over here. If you tell us Neve, we're gonna put a V on it.
Yeah, that's an Neve. That's usually how we get it. Yeah.
Well, we don't get to get Neve on the pod, like on a microphone because we only have 4 inputs. But I had to acknowledge her because she's just a nice presence that's here with us today in the studio. We've had a pretty dang good morning, man.
Yeah.
We're creating a film with Jordan and his team, the Mulligan Brothers. It's really cool how you guys work as a family on these projects, and dude, the content that you guys put out is second to none.
Appreciate
It's
that a lot,
unbelievable,
man.
dude.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. I mean, that's our biggest lead. Is what we try and do is put all the effort into it. What separates a lot of the projects, because we don't know what we're getting when we arrive on set most of the time. We'll do like a little pre-production call like we did, but you know, it's kind of up in the air. So when the guest gives us their time and takes us out on ATVs down a trail to film someone running, that's where a project really comes to life. And then the intimacy of the conversation as well is really important. So like how far and in depth we go. So those little car rides we're having, you know, you're mic'd up, we're having a conversation that's probably quite a natural conversation to have. But the audience gets a little look inside there as well. So
Yeah, it's been real all morning.
Yeah,
It's just been
genuinely,
real
yeah.
for sure. I mean, it's been a real pleasure thus far. Just kind of going throughout the day. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. And if you guys haven't heard of the Mulligan Brothers, you can find them on YouTube. Jordan, you're on Instagram. Jordan Mulligan Brothers, and there's just tons and tons of really in-depth, well-made content, especially on the YouTube channel that they have. So go check that out. Wanted to mention that before we even get going because it's worth checking it out. I promise you. I'm kind of like weird that I'm even here, that we're able to even work with you guys on this, because never would have thought we'd have the opportunity to do something like this with such a high-end, you know, production, and it's a real honor, man. So, you know, I was just at the coffee shop before we get into Jordan's story. There was a blind lady sitting with another young girl, expounding on the gospel, the doctrine of justification by faith, the preservation of the saints, God's effectual call.
The blind girl was?
The blind woman
Yeah.
was dropping hammers
That's an
in the
interesting.
coffee shop.
Yeah,
son.
she's in there a lot, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen her in there.
I'm sitting here listening to this conversation, and I'm talking about she's going through it, son. And I'm just like, what is the Lord doing? The Lord is doing a work right now in his people. Like, to walk into that coffee shop and hear this blind lady, like, expounding on these foundational doctrines and preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ to this young girl in this public space. And it's just normal.
Yeah.
The Lord's doing a work, son. So I just had to, I walked up, I interrupted there. Well, I waited for her to kind of stop, and I said, I just want to testify real quick. What she's telling you is true. It was so good.
Yeah,
man.
that's cool.
It was so good. What about where you're from, Jordan? How is obviously Christianity and faith is, I would say, a pretty open topic and pretty prevalent here in the United States. Although I would say a large percentage of people who claim to be Christian probably are not.
Yeah.
They just kind of play the game. But how is it different? Because you spent a lot of time in the United States. How is it different between here and the UK?
I mean, yeah, you guys are very strong. I think you have very strong followers of the Christian faith. I don't think there is that much. It's a little bit watered down, I'd say, in the UK. I don't mean any offense to anybody in the UK that follows the faith in a really strong way, but there's just a melting pot of different faiths in the UK. There's a lot more. We grew up at a Catholic school. I grew up at a Catholic school. Went to a Catholic church. I was just saying before this as well, I wouldn't say I follow a particular faith still to this day. Still on that journey, and being able to interview loads of different people and speak to loads of different people. That journey's taken me loads of different places, but definitely being in the States, I would say through Christian faiths and speaking to different pastors and speakers and loads of different people who follow the faith. But the differences, I would say, is in the UK it's there's a lot more faith, so it's I don't know, it's not as I wouldn't say you have such a strong following as you see out here in the States. You see it everywhere here, like you really do see it everywhere here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say over here people don't think you guys are open-minded to speak to people who aren't following the faith, but I've found the complete opposite. And I think that's a difference as well. I think feels a bit gate-kept in the UK, the faith, and I think that's probably where you're not getting people coming into the faith as much, because it's a little bit more like maybe the word pretending is a good word, like maybe not actually following it but using it to seem they're like following a certain moral standard and maybe reap the benefits of being perceived as a Christian, but not following the actual Christian values as much.
It's died out a lot in Scotland, right? I mean, Jonathan, one of our buddies, they actually go over there from here and live there 8 months out of the year to share the gospel, and they have bought this building and turned it into a hotel and things. And so, but he was saying that, I guess the history of it was that it was pretty prevalent long ago, and just over time has kind of died out. And the way he described it was much like New Zealand, how it's just, like people are, it's a first world country, but here it's really prevalent, but there it's not. And you think that kind of goes one in one, where you have this Christian following of first world country, but it's not, and has died out over time. So
I think it is you could see it as a negative or a positive, but the spread of so many different faiths.
Yeah.
Like, and there's tons of different faiths in the UK, and I think it's watered down. Like, that's what it is. Yeah, and it's like you can, I went to a Catholic school. You can attend a Catholic school. You don't have to be Catholic to attend Catholic schools. Like, it could be it's a small percentage of the people who go to that school who actually practicing Catholics. Probably the same at most Christian schools in the UK. And I think it's just, there is like remnants of what used to be. So there's a lot of Christian schools, a lot of Catholic schools. There's a lot of churches, lots and lots of churches. And I probably, some people might disagree, but like that's just my experience coming to the US, that you have a much larger following and much stronger followers of the faith, and I'd say less pretenders over here, and like the people that I've bumped into anyway, and now I'm much more open-mindedness here, and I think that's the thing that is the perception from people in the UK who haven't traveled here, is that it's closed-minded, that Christians over here aren't willing to be open-minded or speak to people who aren't involved in the faith. I found the complete opposite. My sister as well. Like we've spoke to many different church pastors and preachers, and they've been the kindest people we've bumped into, and no one's ever said, this is what you've got to do. This, you need to do this, you need to read the Bible. And they've given me advice and help along the way. And I think you read the room better as well, where it's not like, I think everyone needs a different approach if they are to be brought into a faith. Some people might need to be preached to, some people might need a gentle push, and that builds like a deeper resonance with the faith, and keeps them connected in a much better way. So but it's just some people in the UK would probably say that that's wrong, what I'm saying, but being out in the States, I'd say that's how it feels anyway.
Yeah, well, it's probably true. I mean, I think that's been more of a recent thing of, like, probably a generation or two ago, it would have been that if you run into a pastor, he would have told you what you needed to do because you weren't. I mean, that's even would have been my perception. And I think this more openness and just loving people for who they are and showing them Jesus, but also sharing it, I think is a newer thing, a more common thing. As of
what do you think to people who are doing the work of God but don't follow the faith? Because I've seen, like, I feel like I see that at times, but people who don't follow a framework of the faith but maybe are doing the work of God.
You're talking about hypocrites? Is that, would that sum it up?
No, not hit. No, I mean in like a positive way.
He's like people that are doing.
Maybe people who
good things, but say,
I thought that's the word you was going to.
No. I get what you're saying. So what do we think about? Okay, well, so that leads us to, man, and we got to talk about you, Jordan. But that's a good question. What about people who are like living a righteous life?
Yeah,
but they don't believe in Jesus? Is that essentially what you're asking?
Maybe not that they don't believe in it. I'm probably talking to myself, and I'm not saying I live a righteous life at all.
Yeah.
But
I think you are talking to yourself. I mean,
well, yeah.
The story you just laid out to us off camera a few minutes ago. I mean, like you are living your life in a way that affects people positively, but like you said, you don't ascribe to any fact. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I think, and this is the interesting thing, is that final hurdle for me. And I don't know if it's because we grew up in a Catholic church and maybe it's something that just didn't sit well with me, or I don't know, something doesn't feel right about it, or I think that final step, me and Neve have this conversation all the time. We speak to some incredible people, but the final step for me is difficult. And like I'm good living the life, but I think that final hurdle, and I think for some people that's that difficulty where they're like, do I have to do the final step? And I think the answer is probably yes, if I spoke to somebody in the faith.
Well, when you actually understand what we can learn from Scripture about salvation, like what is that, right? Your works and how you live your life have nothing to do with your salvation. So the fact that you are pretty much a good person, right? Like you haven't murdered anyone. Like you're purposeful with your life. You care about other people. Like none of that has anything to do with your salvation, according to what we can read about salvation in Scripture. So I told you this lady in the coffee shop was preaching the doctrine of justification by faith. All right, so salvation is actually, it's actually by way of God's grace and your faith in Jesus Christ. So it is your faith in Jesus Christ and the work that was done by him on the cross. That faith and that faith alone is why I am justified before a holy God, right? So it has nothing to do with my works. Nothing at all. Now, when you believe in Jesus and you say, yes, I am going to trust in Jesus and the work that he did on the cross to cover my mistakes. And by the way, why do our mistakes need to be covered? Because we believe that God is a perfect being. He's perfectly holy. God, if you could call him a he, God hates evil. God hates anything that deviates from his perfect standard of righteousness, right?
Which we all do.
Which we all do. And the moment you make the first mistake in life, the moment you sin, and you're conscious of it, right? You say, as a child, I'm going to manipulate this situation just a little bit, right? Manipulation, that's not a good thing, right? At that moment, you deviate just 1 degree from that standard of perfection. And so you're no longer considered righteous before an absolutely holy God, right? So all of us in the very beginning, we deviate from that standard of righteousness, right? And that trajectory usually just keeps getting further and further and further, right? But it is our faith that is saving us. It is because of our faith in Christ and the work that was done on the cross on our behalf. Not only the work that was done on the cross, but our faith in the fact that Jesus lived a perfect life. He's the only living being who didn't deviate from that perfect standard. He was sinless. That's what made him the perfect sacrifice, right? Because he was the Lamb without spot. He was sinless. He went to the cross. When you trust in the work that was done on the cross to cover your mistakes, that is why you are justified. That faith is what's justifying you, right? Has nothing to do with your works. Now, at the same time, when you receive this faith and you publicly confess, I'm going to trust in the work that was done on the cross to save me, you receive the Holy Spirit, right? And so the Holy Spirit then begins to lead you through this process of sanctification. And so a Christian who receives the gift of salvation, you should see evidence of change in that person's life, right? You should see them desiring the things of God. You should see them when they do make mistakes. You should see them repenting of that, asking for forgiveness. If I wrong you, I'm going to come to you and ask you, hey, man, that was wrong. It's tearing me up, man. Forgive me for that. So there is evidence of receiving the gift of salvation, and that evidence is the change that we experience in our hearts, right? Yeah, man, it's not about works. I know that's hard to grasp.
No, every other religion tells you that. Every other religion says if you do these things and you're good enough, you make it to the top of the mountain, so to speak. And that's what we want as humans. We want to earn what we have, even if we did do something wrong. Oftentimes we say, hey, punish me. Like if I did something wrong, give me my punishment. It doesn't feel good a lot of times to have someone pay for your meal or, in front of you in the drive-thru, they pay for, it's like, well, man, let me pay for my own food. I earned that. But
yeah, we want to say, just tell me what to do.
Exactly.
I want to be able to go through these steps, right?
But God, God is perfect and can't be in the presence of imperfection, and people think that he doesn't want to. But when we read the Bible, we see God has always wanted to dwell with his people from the beginning in the garden to the temple Solomon built, and now he dwells in us through the Holy Spirit. That's how we are the temple of God. And he's always wanted to make a way to be with his people. And in a sense, he is coming down and making the way by his grace, rather than saying, hey, if you do all these things right, you can have your own planet. You can have, you can go to heaven, but you got to do all these things right, and it puts all of it on you when we can't, So that, to me, is the differentiation between that and all the other religions, because there is some, overlap between a lot of them, right, with what they say. So.
Yeah, and I think the best example of this in Scripture is when you read about, maybe you've heard about the thief. They just titled The Thief on the Cross, right? So when Jesus was crucified, there were two criminals on either side of him on Calvary. And one of the men who was there being crucified alongside Jesus, he, in his last moment, believes that Jesus Christ, the man hanging on the cross beside him, he says, oh my gosh, that is the Son of God. And he is indeed dying right here beside me for the sins of all of his people. And he believes in that moment, and Jesus turns to him and says, you'll be with me in paradise. Well, that man lived a life of wickedness. He was a criminal. He was on a cross. Like, he didn't have the opportunity to come down off that cross after he believed and go and do a bunch of good things in the world. He died right there. But Jesus told him, because you have believed in me, you will be with me today in paradise. And that's one of the places where we get the doctrine of justification by faith. You can't view, in that specific circumstance, you can't view justification. It totally cuts out any idea of justification by works, because the guy wasn't able to work. He lived a life of wickedness, and he was condemned, and he was being rightfully crucified. But he joined Jesus in paradise that same very day. Why? Because he had the revelation that this was God in flesh, and he came for this purpose. You see what I'm saying? It's by faith and faith alone.
But that's where it's hard, right? Because if you say, yes, it is by faith and faith alone, but how do I have it?
Oh, that's the hard one.
I mean, like, I've struggled with that,
Yeah.
Like, I grew up similar to you, probably, just growing up in a Christian school, being raised in it.
Yeah.
But then you get a little bit older in life and start saying, like, well, this is weird. Why do we even do this? Or why do I think this? Or all these people are telling me this, and I don't even know why I believe what I believe, but I just say I believe it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then it's like, if there's something that you say that you're told you have to have faith in, and you're like, yeah, but I just don't. Like, I have a hard time believing that. That's a tough thing to just make yourself believe,
Yeah.
I mean, I struggled with that for a long time.
That's why I, you have to land on the conclusion that very faith, the fact that you're able to believe in Jesus Christ and the work that was done on the cross, and you're able to truly trust in that as the thing that is saving you. You have to arrive at the conclusion that that very faith is a gift that you receive from God, right? Because you can't just make up your mind today that that's what you want to believe. And it be a real, genuine faith. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that even that very faith that is saving you is a gift that we receive from the Father by way of his grace. And so I personally pray every day when I, seek God in prayer. God, thank you for this faith that you have given me, because it is the most precious gift that I could have ever received. Because at this point in my life, everything is held up by that faith. All my hope, my mission in life, it's all undergirded by that gift of faith. So it is, I have to arrive at the conclusion it's a gift and not necessarily a conscious decision that you just decide to make one day. You know what I mean?
That makes sense. That does make sense. I do feel like there is something there. I just think to speak to the way you said it is like, I feel like it needs, I need to arrive there. It needs to be in depth. Like, it needs to be a deep feeling for me. And I think I don't know, maybe there does need to be a gift or, I don't know, but like, I think I'm moving towards that, you know, like I do feel like I'm moving towards that, but.
You know, the great thing, Jordan, we have a little insight into how this faith comes and so God uses people, and Scripture tells us that faith comes by hearing the Word of God. That's how that's one of the ways it comes. So, you know, you may not know it now, but this little conversation that we're having and this gospel that's been shared is doing a work in you. You may not realize it now.
I believe that. That's what we spoke about a little bit before this is I've had moments where somebody shared something from the Bible or a passage or even just some advice that's, you know, from the understanding of, you know, the Christian faith. And those are like little seeds that are growing,
That's
you
it,
know,
man.
and that's
And
that
who
is
provides
happening.
the growth? God.
Yeah.
Makes it grow.
Yeah.
And that is the receiving that gift of faith, right? The seed has been planted in you, in your sister, in your children. The seed is there, and it is God that will make that seed grow. That's the great thing about sharing the gospel and when that happens for you, and it's going to set you on fire one day, and all of a sudden everything in your life is undergirded by this faith like I just described to you, and you're going to want to share it with everybody. And in the beginning you start thinking, how can I say this in a way to convince someone to believe this? But then you finally arrive to the realization that it's not on me to convince anybody to believe any certain way, because there's no way I can say it that's a surefire way to convince them to believe this. All we can do is just share this seed, and God will make it grow. You know? So
Yeah.
it's a wild process, man. It really is.
Yeah. When did you find faith? What age?
I guess I would have been about 26 years old, probably 26, 27. Yeah. I want to talk about you for a little bit, though, for sure, because you've done some amazing stuff. I'm interested here in a minute. I want to hear how you got started on this journey of content creation, because I think that's what most people know the name Mulligan Brothers.
Yeah.
They know it by the platform you guys have built on YouTube and the content that you've created. So I want to hear how that got started and kind of what that journey's been like. But I guess this episode's brought to you by Barbell Apparel, our partner at Barbell Apparel. And let me tell you guys, the new Ultra shorts are on point, son, and you can only get them in one place. Kyle has made the Ultra shorts from Barbell Apparel live on our page on Barbell. So I'll attach a link to that in the description of this episode. You can't buy them off the normal Barbell website, but he said, I'll do a soft release for you guys on your page.
All right.
So they're on there. Both
That's
the
big.
That is real big.
and they're on there
What about
branded
that shirt?
Yeah, the shirt's live too.
Okay. is
Yeah,
that
all I know
that-
about is the shorts.
I think that's just our page too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we got the
Go check out the Ultra shorts. I'll put a link in the description here.
the
They-
shirts are so live we can't even, we don't even have
They
them.
hit the dang
new.
spot, son. They hit the spot with those shorts.
They're
man.
light, ain't they?
Yeah, they're perfect.
Yep.
So check them out, barbellapparel.com. Thank you, Barbell, for making this episode possible. Can you go see if that AC's on, Blake?
Yeah.
It's getting a little warm in here. So, Jordan, back to the question that I posed earlier. How did you decide this was the direction you were going to go with your career, man?
Oh man, I mean, I'd been doing loads of different things. Nothing had really sat right with me. I'd been chasing money, starting businesses. We were from quite a poor background, so that had always been an ambition of mine to get wealth and to get success. And at the time, my brother was doing YouTube, making workout videos for us, like motivational, just motivational sounds so we could work out in the garden too. And they were really cool. Like I think he had like around 20,000 people following him, which at the time, 10 years ago, was a considerable amount of people. I was running my business. Everything was sort of okay. And I was expecting my first son. And he was born. And he was stillborn, so he'd passed away. And that kind of like, I remember feeling so helpless and like I had absolutely nothing. I didn't, the money, the business, everything just felt pointless. And I was with my brother, and he was like, hey, maybe you could try do some of this with me. Because I used to be into filmmaking a little bit as a kid. Like I was, I used to enjoy it. He said, maybe you can help me with this. And I latched onto it so quickly. Like the moment he said it, I was all in. I sold my business, didn't have a job at the time. Like I just got rid of everything, and something just felt super right about it. I really wanted to help people going through what I was going through at the time. Yeah. So like that was it. And then from that point on, I was just all in. Like we would edit all day. I was in the process of selling the business and getting rid of everything. And then we moved all ourselves, myself, my brother. We hired our other brother, William, my younger brother, and we moved into my mum's attic, which is like this tiny little crawl space. Started editing videos full time. Maybe I think it was like $80 to $100 a month. It was, it wasn't much money, but it was enough to eat. And then I think we had a few comments come through of people like, this really helped me. And I think one in particular came through. Some guy had been thinking about killing himself, and he'd watched this video. And I remember we all sat there and was like, if we can just do this, and keep doing this for the rest of our lives, like we can maybe repeat this, like this guy, stopping doing such a terrible thing to himself. Like I want to do this forever. And like we all agreed, like that's what we're going to do. So then that was it from there. Then Neve joined us shortly after that. And then we just folded everything in. And it's always been like we fold everything back into the business. I picked up a camera and started directing them, doing the interviews, learning how to filmmake. And then eventually, once the money started to grow a little bit and we started working with partners and sponsors, we started traveling the world to do it. And I knew, the edge that we could have on everybody else was we were willing to travel and go wherever it was, the story was. And that was a really crucial thing to me because my story of experienced stillbirth and losing my son, for me is a story, and it's somebody I needed to hear from when I was in that moment of despair, but it didn't exist. I couldn't find it.
Wow, man.
So traveling around the world to me is like people's story resonates with loads of different people. I'm not going to find them all in London or LA or, I need to go to these places and find these stories, whether it's Alaska, North Atlanta, wherever it is, we can travel. And I think that's why we've had success, because the varied guests that we have on the show resonate with different people. Sometimes it has 100 views, sometimes it has 100,000 views, sometimes it has 1 million views. But they have impact, and that's, that was everything. And then, we just, from there, it's kind of just spiraled into what it is today. So, yeah.
Hey, that's to me such a powerful purpose. Like, you had that purpose of like, I can't find the story or the piece of content or the like anything to help me get through this terrible tragedy that I'm going through right now. So I'm going to step up and make that type of content for other people. Man, that's powerful, dude.
Appreciate that, man.
Holy smokes.
That's how you're doing what you should be doing and what you want to do when you do it and you don't make no money and you're broke and you're not living the life you want to live, but you do it because of the reasons that it's helping other people.
What was really, I was obsessive. So after Jacob died, for about 2 or 3 weeks, I couldn't feel anything. Like I had no emotion. And I felt like the only thing I felt was guilt around that idea. I was like, how come I don't feel pain? Like, this is the worst thing that I've ever experienced in my life. So I would Google obsessively, like, father who's experienced grief, father who's lost his son, father who's experienced stillbirth. Like, I was just trying. I thought it was because I was a dad that, you know, maybe that's why I wasn't feeling this pain, and that was my struggle. I didn't realize it was my body protecting me, because it probably didn't think I could cope with the pain at the time. But I couldn't find the answer anywhere. There was no books, there was no blogs, nothing. I went to this group in the UK. It's called SANS, and it's a stillbirth charity, stillbirth and baby loss charity. And I went there, and it was like an AA meeting for people who'd lost their kids. And we're sat in this big round table, round room around this round table, and everyone's going around and sharing their stories. And I was up last. I introduced myself to the group, and I just explained, like, I've not felt any pain. I've felt guilty about it. This has been the worst thing, is just not being able to be upset about this. And this dad said, you know, do you mind if I just share my story, Jordan? I was like, yeah, of course, please. And he shared his story. He said, I had the same feelings. He said it lasted 2 years. And one day my dad came to the door, and we'd not spoken about my baby, about losing my son. And he opened the door, and he said, I'm really sorry. I never realized what you'd been through. And he said, the second my dad acknowledged it, like, the pain came back, and I fell to the floor, and I had this flood of emotions. And you know, that was his story. That was his him sharing his feelings on what he went through. But I drove home that night from that, just hearing this one man's experience, just knowing that I wasn't alone in the initial feeling, you know, the initial of not being able to feel. He felt it for 2 years. And that was enough for it to be my resolution to not being able to feel. And it was a 15-minute drive home. It wasn't far to drive back from the group. And I had to pull over like 3 or 4 times because I was crying so badly. I couldn't see the road. Like I couldn't see where I was driving. Like I just was the grief was there. And then began a new chapter, you know. Then I had to go through the grief, and like that's another story. But I managed to get over that by hearing this one man's story, and that's really reinforced Mulligan Brothers for me. Is that there's people out there who, you know, have stories to tell that could really help people. They're just not platformed, or sometimes they're not platformed, or they're not platformed in the right way. It's like, obviously your message gets out there all the time, Chad, but like I want to try and tell it in a way that resonates with our audience or resonates with different people. So we will try and come at it from a different angle, whether that's cinematically or as filmmakers or through the questions and conversation that we have. And that's what we're trying to do, is reach that audience that is underserved, and it's not hearing those stories and getting that little clicky moment that can really be transformative for somebody. It could be a sentence or a word. So yeah, that reinforced it when I spoke to that guy that day. And ever since, yeah, purpose is a real strong word for me, because I feel like I found my purpose that day, 100%. Yeah.
Man, I had no clue. That's awesome, brother. Has there ever been temptation for you guys as a team to like stray from that to kind of accommodate what you think people want to hear or see, or have you guys been able to really stay on that path consistently through this whole journey?
Have we stayed true all the way through? We've tried to.
That's good, man.
I've tried to, yeah. I think, you know, maybe, you know, we've got 10 members of staff now, so we've got a big team. You know, I've got people's livelihoods are at stake if we don't perform well. So I think in those darker moments when, you know, maybe we've not been doing well on the YouTube algorithm, and a lot of faith comes into it then, like a lot of trust of like, it'll come back around if I need it to, just keep working, to keep doing the work that we think is the good work, and then it'll come back around. And we always say that, trust the process, you know, whilst we're doing it. Like if it's sticky, you know, if it's been a tough year, trust the process, just keep doing it. Maybe I've gave in sometimes. I don't know. I couldn't pinpoint a particular project.
Yeah.
I'm always coming at it from the right approach. But maybe I've tried to pick a popular guest or somebody that I thought might have, you know, helped boost the channel up a little bit. But I've always found that even if they performed well in that moment, you're not serving the right audience anyway. So on the back end of that, you then, maybe I find a good witch, Shelley Rogers. She's 75 years old, had a double mastectomy, went through cancer. And she talks about her faith and or the ways she found healing in her faith and the ways in which she's found healing, all this kind of stuff. It's like that wouldn't resonate with her if I've just had some big YouTuber on there who's going to draw views in. Like the next audience along is going to go, who's this? Like this isn't someone we subscribe to come see. So it never works out anyway. So I think the feedback we always get is stick to what we're trying to do. Even if the views don't come, I feel like it comes in another way. That's when a message will come through and say, hey, it helped today.
Yeah.
Man, that's so good.
Yeah, we sometimes find it in other ways.
I figured that's what your answer was going to be. I really did, because when you have such a clearly defined purpose, and it is something that is so closely tied to a experience that you had, a traumatic experience, like that's strong, man. And I asked that question because this is something that I've struggled with personally.
We do.
Yeah, we struggle with that a lot. It's like, you start off on a journey, and you have purpose. Like for me initially, it was to inspire people, right? To inspire people to get out and maybe run for the first time, or maybe explore their faith conversation for the first time, or pick up a Bible, or to inspire people. But then, as things grow and even things in the world begin to change, like all the political strife that, during COVID was a big period for me, where I think and I talked to Jesse about this yesterday. I was like, I even apologized to Jesse yesterday. I was like, hey man, during those years, like I became an angry person, and I really drifted away from what I had originally set out to do, like my original purpose, and I got distracted by all this crap that was going on. And not that stuff wasn't important. I mean, there was crazy stuff going on, but I wasn't able to interact with it in a healthy way. And during those times, I said things during those times out of anger that reflected poorly on people who were involved in getting me to the point that I was at. You know what I'm saying? And that's why, that's why, and so we're in a really cool season right now to where I really feel like we're honing back in and getting back to our original purpose, for why we were doing what we're doing.
Just a point to that is you cannot go wrong if you're aligned with your purpose. I think that's where a lot of people talk to me about that, like, oh, my money's down, the business isn't running really well. How have you dealt with like those darker moments? I can never look back at any moment where I've been fully aligned with a purpose and regret any of those moves, even if we lost money, even if we had to unfortunately lose staff members or team members. Like, if that has happened, but we were aligned with our purpose, I've never regretted any of those moments. That's the way to live, man. That for me is like, if you're looking for true success, that's what it feels like for me. Like, if I can live the rest of my life doing that, I'm happy. And we've had moments where we've almost been on the brink of the business failing, and we all sat in a room. We just bought our studio at the time. We put all our money into this studio. Banks wouldn't give us a loan. So we had to put everything in. And the money train was fantastic. YouTube was rolling, and then it stopped suddenly. They took everything away from us, and we had all these bills to pay. All this construction had to be done. And we were in the middle of like creating some of our greatest work. And we sat in a room. We didn't have any money whatsoever to continue creating content. And we sat there and said, what is the way forward with this? And we all made a pact. We said, if we can continue to make these videos, let's all go get a job at the local Tesco's, which is just like a Walmart. We'll go there, we'll work there in the day, we'll come back in the evening, we still get to do this. that's where we knew, we were doing the right thing. We've found it. And I say this to Neve every single day. If I can just continue to do this, if I can just keep doing this every single day for the rest of my life, that's it. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, I think once you don't live with regret when you find that, and if you make decisions based on that, with that as sort of your North Star for your decisions, you can't go wrong.
Well, I needed to hear that today. Thank you, brother. And I think a lot of people listening probably needed to hear that, because it's so easy to get distracted from that. It really is. That's solid, brother. What is there for you personally, like a all-time favorite project, story, film?
Yeah.
And how many years have you been doing this?
Since Jacob passed, it'll be about 9 years now.
9 years.
Yeah, 9
okay,
years,
long time though.
It's been a long time. Yeah.
Has there been a favorite for you?
There's
Some that
one that stands
impacted
out
you?
particularly, and it ties into the story I was talking about earlier. But it impacted me massively. It was an interview. I say this every single time anyone asks me what's my favorite interview, and trust me, there's tons of fun interviews and amazingly entertaining interviews, but nothing can beat this because it's transformed my life. It was an interview with a church pastor called Owen McManus out of LA. And I wasn't supposed to be meeting him that day. I was doing an interview with a guy called Lewis House. You've been on it.
Yeah.
You worked with Lewis. Lewis is a lovely guy. And we was interviewing Lewis, and he was like, hey, I'm off to this speaking engagement with a friend of mine, Owen McManus at the church. Do you want to come down? I was like, yeah, I'd love to come down. We can shoot your speaking engagement bit. And he's like, I'll introduce you to Owen. And so I went down there, and he introduced me to Erwin, and he says, you guys should do an interview. I was like, I'd love to, that'd be incredible. He says, I'd love to do an interview, Jordan. I'm flying to meet the president of, I can't remember what president, it was Nayib Bukele. I don't know if you know the president, he's the president. He was meeting the president the next day.
Okay.
Anyway, so he's got something really important to do. He's running his first big event. I'll try and make it happen. So I film all day. We're waiting until late at night. Owens comes out, after doing this event, massive event, and he's like, "I'll do this. Like, let's make this happen." And I was like, "Okay, this is amazing. Like, this guy's done it. We've waited till midnight to get this done." We start shooting the episode. Episode's going fantastically. The guy's incredible speaker, and halfway through the interview, he goes for a water break, and his son asks me, says, why did you do this? And I explained about Jacob and what I'd got into, and I said I'd lost my son, and as his dad Erwin comes back, he says, "What was your son's name?" I said Jacob, and then Erwin clicks on that we're talking about my son who'd passed away, and we start talking about my experience, and that I was at the time, whilst I was filming these documentaries in LA, I was going through a lot of pain, and I felt like something was blocking me from creating documentaries, and had been for the last 9 years, and I was really struggling with something. So we get talking, and I said, I'm in a lot of pain. Like, I visit his grave, and it's a very painful experience, but the pain is because I loved him so much, and that's why I go to him. The pain is because I loved him so much. He says, John, I don't mean to disagree with you or anything, but I just want to, I'd love to, give some of my advice and what I feel. He said, it's not, the pain isn't because you loved him so much. The pain is because you're struggling to let go. And Jacob isn't in the ground anymore. He's with you. And you need to do something to connect with him outside of that graveyard. Grieving over that grave is not going to bring him back. And, it's the love that you need to connect with him. And I'm butchering his words. If you go back and listen to the episode, he's just incredible. And I'm on the verge of tears. I'm trying to conduct an interview with him. Like, he's not supposed to be interviewing me.
Yeah.
And I say that to him. And I had to take a moment. Like, I had to really pull away from the camera for a second and just take a moment, because something really shifted inside of me. And he said, "Do you run?" I was like, "Yeah, I run a little bit." He's like, "When you're running, think of Jacob. Go to a place, find a new place for him, and connect with him in that place. Could be the ocean, you could go surfing, it could be crafts, whatever. Just find somewhere to connect with him. Once you've done that, and you do that long enough, and you take that concept of him away from the grave, he will then connect with you he'll be in your heart. He'll be with you at all times. He'll be with you in your work. that's the shift. Like, that's the thing that's, stopping you right now. And that felt, when he said that, it felt so true, because I had fueled all of my work with Mulligan Brothers and my business through, I had been through this horrible thing, this really difficult thing that I'd managed to get through, and that the world was extremely cruel to me, and I'd been through this hardship, but I was very, very strong. This is my inner voice that I had at the time. But I'm a very, very strong person because I'd got through that, and I'd managed to carry that, and nobody knew what I was experiencing, and I managed to get through that by myself. So that's how I carried the company in that way as well. Like, I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to prove the world wrong. But it was like, it almost had like a negative feel to it. Like, and when Erwin was talking to me, he's like, if you switch that to the power of love you feel for Jacob, it'd be even more powerful. So then began the journey of the stone lift. So then, this is a long story to say this is my favorite interview, by the way.
No, it's good,
apologies.
man. It's
good. So I knew that I was seeking something to attach to Jacob, to find Jacob somewhere. And over the 9 years, when Jacob died, I was broke at the time, had no money, and I hadn't got him a headstone. But every week, religiously, on a Sunday, I'd go to the grave with fresh, they're called baby's breath flowers and roses, and I'd put them in. I'd tidy his grave up. I'd cry over his grave. I'd kiss the earth because it felt like that's the closest I could get to his body. I'd lay the flowers, but I'd still never put a headstone there. So when I got back to the UK and we travelled around for around 3 or 4 months, I was shooting some documentaries in North Scotland. I was driving along in Inverness on this shore road. It's like there's a big shorefront on the left-hand side. And out of the corner of my eye, I see this stone, and it looks like a headstone. It's like the perfect shape for a headstone. And when I say a glimpse of a stone, like it was a flashing glimpse. We're doing 60 miles per hour down this road. And I slammed my brakes on, I pulled the car over, and I say to Neve, I was like, I need to go down there. There's a stone. And I mean, you must have thought I was like possessed at this point, because like it just happened out of nowhere. Like, I'd not said I was trying to do this thing. And I jumped down this, like, it's like an 8-foot barrier down into a flood defense. I jumped down there, and there it is, just laying on this beach, like perfectly square, laying in the middle of the beach. And you wouldn't believe me if we didn't have footage of this. Like, we were shooting a documentary at the time. So we'd just come from set. Neve's got a camera. I was like, film this, because I think this is a headstone for Jacob. And we get down there, and then there it is, the stone. And the moment I put air underneath that, like I picked it up a little bit. And I was a big, strong guy at the time. Like, I'd just been doing the Stone World Record, the Atlas Stone World Record. And I picked it up, and I knew it was 100 kilos. And the instant air was underneath it, I was like, I'm carrying this home to my son. Like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to carry this headstone to my son. So then, I didn't think of the logistics of how I was going to do it. I took the stone. I knew I needed to put it somewhere safe so no one would take it.
I don't think no one else was going to walk off of that.
Yeah, it wasn't moving nowhere.
I saw pictures of the stone. I don't know if the listeners quite understand, but I've seen pictures of the stone.
It was a big lump of granite, yeah. So, and then, for the next like 20, 30 minutes, I'm struggling to get it up this flood defense. Like, I'm trying to push it up. Again, Neve's, you wouldn't believe it unless Neve had the footage. I've got Crocs on, I've stacked bricks to try and balance. I almost fall a few times, but eventually get it over the flood defense. And then we went home. The stone was put somewhere safe. We went home, and I needed to figure out logistically how I was going to do this. But also, I knew that this would connect me with my grief. And, I'm doing this in honor of my son. We're 480-ish miles away from home. So I knew that it was a long journey to get that stone back. And I needed to think of logistically how I could do it, but also in a way that I felt was worthy of honoring my son. So I felt like if I carried that on my back, to the closest stonemason, and had it cut down into a headstone at the stonemason, then I could carry the rest on foot at a slightly lighter weight, because a baby's headstone's smaller than a typical headstone. So I Googled it, and the stonemason was 28 miles away. So I was like, I think that's possible. So first training session, I got 100 kilos of plates, rogue plates, taped them up, put a stake through a wooden board, some car straps stapled onto the board, put the plates on, and then loaded 100 kilos on my back and just went for a mile. And like, if I could do a mile, I could probably do 2. if I could do 2, then I could train for 3. And if I kept doing that, I'd eventually be at 28. And we did that for the next 6 months. But the first mile was like, I got back from that and, I felt like I might be on my limit, but I'll try next week. That's it. We'll do 1 more mile next week. And that's how we started training. And I estimated, based on the dimensions of the stone, that the lighter stone's going to be around 50 to 60 pounds. So I trained with about 55 pounds. And we ramped the mileage up, over the next 6 months for the longer runs as well. So we'd have 2 heavy sessions a week, and then we'd have 2 longer runs each week, and then that was it. The journey began, and we pulled it off 6 months ago. We pulled the stone run off, and that's another big one for me. That's a life-changing moment for me. But that's a very, very long way of saying Erwin McManus was the best episode. It changed my life. For the good, man.
So that's where that whole journey began, is in that conversation.
Yeah.
For the listeners, because we have primarily American listeners, how much is 100 kilos?
Yeah.
225 pounds?
220, 225, something like that. Yeah, I think you're around
200 to 225 pounds.
You remember how you look putting 100 pounds on your back?
Yeah, we did a video the other day where we had 100-pound rucksack.
Yeah.
And no. No. We were doing laps around that little field in my backyard. And
it's rough.
Yeah, I mean, I was hard-pressed to go a quarter mile with a 100-pound rucksack on my back, and you're talking about a 220-something pound stone, which is unwieldy. It's not like it's
backpack that you can put on your back.
With a nice round plate in it. Like,
it was pretty archaic as well. Like the way, because I trained on, I had an old gym mat that I'd like cut into lengths. Like a crash mat. I'd cut that into lengths because the car tires were cutting my skin so badly. But it worked. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. So on the day of the run, we could have probably got some company to make some really comfortable backpack that could have worked. But I knew that this worked. It just was extremely painful, but it didn't fail. One of the runs we did, we tried a backpack that claimed to be able to, you could ruck with 200 pounds in it. That's what they claimed, but it fell apart within a mile. It just ripped to shreds in a mile. So I didn't want to risk that on the day. So we was out there with car straps and crash mats, taped up with a wooden board, and a metal frame attached to it. And that was the difficult part of it. It was it had to be done in this really archaic manner. But I think that journey of going through the pain, when I watch some of your docs, I don't know what, it's almost like a bit of a spiritual journey, going through all this pain. That was required. It was a necessity that I paid the price out there. I think the whole journey was to reconnect with my grief that I'd suppressed. To do that, the pain of losing a child, it better hurt. I better be in. I wanted to be on the brink of death whilst I was doing that. That's what I wanted to feel like. I really wanted to be very close to. I know it sounds quite weird. I wouldn't, and like you say, it had to have purpose behind it. I wouldn't have done it if there wasn't something very special and very important attached to me. And I would never recommend somebody doing something like that
to prove you're tough.
Yeah, to prove you're tough. No, that's not it. It was to dig that back up and to finally put Jacob to rest in a better place for me, which was my heart. It had to be agony. It had to be the worst of the worst. And that's what we conjured up. And I think the response as I was talking to people was, this is impossible. What you're trying to do, I understand that you want to do this and your reasons and your purpose, the purpose behind it, but it is not physically possible. You need to reassess what you're doing.
Devin Larrett told you that,
Devin
right?
Larrett, I've got a voice. I'd love to play you the voice note if I could find it. It's quite explicit of do not do this. Have you got my phone? I could play it. It's a minute long. I've never played this to anyone, but
now, do you know who Devin Larrett is?
No.
Well, I'm a big arm wrestler.
Yeah.
Well, he's the best in the world. Canadian Devin Larrett. I mean, if I could arm wrestle one person, it'd be him.
So he was
just to.
Yeah,
I might pull him a little bit.
Are you friends with him, Jordan?
Don't know him. So
Okay.
I've got a filmmaker friend, Rory, who's shooting a documentary with Devon.
Okay.
Devon was in the Canadian Special Forces and was he was the Iron Man Special Forces champion. In fact, it says it in the voice note if I can find the right one. And he'd caught wind of what I was doing just through an Instagram post that Rory, because Rory does a bit of rucking as well. So he was like, "Oh, my friend's planning this ruck in honor of his son. This is what he's going to do." And then Devon says, "Can you pass me the phone?" And this is the voice note that he sent me. Is this the one?
He's basically trying to get.
That's not the one yet. So he's trying to tell me.
He's trying to get you to save yourself some long-term.
Yeah.
Injury.
Exactly that. Yeah. It's on here somewhere. So, and then what happened was, in fact, I'll play it you first, and then.
Jordan, you might already be.
Jordan,
I've got Devin with me here, who happens to know a thing or two about rucking. He's got some advice. Take it or leave it. It may help the race. It may, I don't know, worth paying attention to.
I didn't know Devin.
Hey, buddy. Devin Larrett here. Rory told me a little bit about your upcoming challenge. 100-kilo rucksack for 26 miles, and then followed up with like a 60-pound. Was it 60 pound?
60 pounds.
60-pound rucksack for like 400 or 450 kilometers? Miles, yeah. Over 10 days to follow. Okay, listen, please don't let me discourage you in any way, because I think it's super ballsy, but I'm going to tell you, so just so you understand where I'm coming from, I'm a bigger guy. I'm like 6'5", I'm like 240, and back when I used to do this, I was truly, really, I was in an exceptional shape, okay? I won military Ironman, a special forces guy. I lived with a rucksack on my back for most of my 20-year career, okay? I'm gonna tell you something. What you're trying to do is probably gonna hurt you very badly, okay? I'm gonna tell you something, especially Rory told me that you're not a conditioned rucksack guy, and I think that if you were a conditioned rucksack guy, you probably would know not to even try something like this.
He is training. He is training very hard. So Jordan, I don't need to mix words here. I know that you're training extremely hard.
He did say that, but he said that you were somewhat new to it, okay? Now, I'm going to just tell you that a 100-kilo rucksack is going to cut you, okay? It's going to cut you deeply, all right? Your posture's going to get really fucked, okay? To go 26 miles with a 100-kilo rucksack, you will be surviving that, okay? You're not going to be running, you're not going to be shuffling, you're not going to be nothing. You're going to be surviving for 26 miles, and the amount of muscular damage and structural damage that you will take over that will be extremely significant if you are able to complete. And even, I'm saying this from the perspective of a guy who would be extremely physically fit, okay? An extremely physically fit human being would struggle. Like, I'm talking about an Olympic level of fitness. It's gonna be very difficult for you to complete the first leg, and then I promise you, the average of 50 miles a day with a rucksack, buddy, I wish you the best, but I'm telling you, if any of my friends told me they were doing this, I'd tell them they were fucking crazy and not to do it. Okay, you're gonna hurt yourself. I'm just telling you, okay? Listen, I'll be watching, and hats off to you, but I think you should reassess your goals. I think that what's manageable is, I think the distance is manageable on the second leg, extremely challenging. I think you should take it down a little bit, your weight, okay? 60 is even gonna be really hard to maintain that every day, okay? Your bones are gonna receive a massive amount of damage. Like your shin splints are, your legs, your joints are it's probably gonna be very difficult for you. Even if you go into it with enhanced or whatever, I don't care. It's not gonna make a lot of difference. And the thing is if you have that beginning portion so heavy, there's just a very, very high likelihood that you're gonna get an injury. You're going to get an injury, and you're not going to be able to complete the second portion. Anyways, good luck. It sounds like you got balls of steel, and that's fucking super cool, and I think it's an extremely incredible challenge, one that I don't know anybody who wouldn't think of this as an extremely fucking difficult thing to do. So bravo, but, I'd say do 20K or do 20 miles with the 100 and see how you feel before you attempt to race it. Good luck, man.
So yeah, Jordan, you might.
So when I was in North Carolina at that point, I'd only done 8 miles with the 100 kilos, and that was the only point where I was like, okay, I need to. Because he's to me like like you say, he's the GOAT of arm wrestling. Like he's very renowned. Like he's like Michael Jordan of arm wrestling. So I knew of Devin. I didn't know about his his military career, and that he'd done stuff in rucking. So when he said that really messed with my head. Where I'm like, okay, right,
that was going to be my question. How do you respond to that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I spent a while sat on a porch in North Carolina with my training gear that I'd shipped out there to just train with that night, contemplating like have I bitten off more than I could chew here, like because there is a physical limit to the body. There is a physical limit to the body. I was trying to find it, but like had I taken it too far? Like was I taking it too far? I wasn't bothered about the stuff he was talking about, like the permanent injury and all those kind of things. I felt like I wanted to pay that price anyway, regardless if that was the case. What I was worried about is not being able to do it. Like if I got to mile 20 and a bone snapped or something that was truly debilitating, not tears or stuff like that, but like something that was like I would not be able to take a step. That would be too much for me. I don't know if I would be able to recover that from that psychologically, because this was attached to doing this for Jacob. And then it clicked to me that night, I felt anyway, he doesn't understand the depth of the pain that I'm willing to endure with this. So I got the video, I sent it to my editor, I said, make that into a motivational video for me. And then I told Neve to get the weights in the car. We drove out to a track, and we did 10 miles that night. And so I wanted to hit double digits that night. I was like, if I can do 10 miles, I know I can do 20. And then if I can do 20, I'll be able to get up to the 30 mark. And we did a horrible 10 miles that night, like a gruesome, in the heat, like just losing so much water. But I did 10, and I was like, if I can do 10, I can do this. And we carried on training up until about 18. I think that was my peak of training, was an 18 miler. But no, it massively knocked me. But there was also hearing all these opinions from these people of saying this is impossible. I can't tell you how attractive it was to hear that stuff, like that this is more difficult than you think and you're not going to be able to do this. There's just something about it that I wanted to show people. I feel like the depth of pain that I felt, like I really wanted to be able to articulate like what it feels like to lose a child, and this doesn't cut doesn't cut it. Like that's not what it felt like at all. Like
you can't replicate it.
You can't replicate it. But what we found when I was actually doing the run is that people had some understanding and were very open to me to talk to me about their losses as well when I was on the run, because it spoke enough words. There's a guy carrying a headstone running through the village, wherever it is in the north of England. I didn't need to say any words to them. They could see there's a guy who has obviously been through something so traumatic that he's going to these depths to pay homage or something. They knew that there was a special depth to the pain that he'd felt, and it gave people a somewhat of an understanding of what I'd been through. But yeah, it's so that was like I don't know, there's something about it that I really liked, the idea that he thought it was impossible. And there wasn't many people who said it was possible. Chad Robichaux was one of the guys who was like, you can do it, you'll be able to do it. So that was nice. The last time I spoke to Chad on his podcast, it was maybe a month before I was actually doing this, and he was like, no, you could do this. Like if you do it right, it's possible. So yeah.
You know what? I'm so thankful that you were willing to take the time to come on the podcast with us today, because it's funny when we were hanging out with Jordan this morning, he casually mentioned we did a little 400 miler and casually mentioned, well, my knees aren't so good right now. And it's like, to get to hear what this really was is, it's just such an honor, man, to be in your presence and to get the story firsthand. I mean, I want to go to the very beginning though, when it was time to rock and roll. You had the 100 kilo stone on your back. Like, were those first steps, were you confident? Were you second guessing yourself? What was the beginning like?
I had like the most confidence ever, over too much confidence, but because like I can't describe the apparatus we were using. You got to see it. Like
I saw it in some photos.
Yeah, some of the old. Yeah, if you went through my Instagram, you could see some of the old stuff. That would cut the skin on every single time I'd use it. My back, a layer of skin would be gone, and across my shoulders, a layer of skin would be gone. Those pain signals for 18 miles or 12 miles in training of 100 kilos. And some of those training sessions were like 10-hour long sessions, just grinding step after step after step. You learn. I learned a very like deep part of my mind of where I could go to with pain. I could sometimes I'd get 3 miles into a session that was a 12-mile day, and I'd be in the most excruciating pain. And I knew at some point, it could be an hour, it could be 2 hours, it could be 3 hours, but it will pass. It will definitely pass. And knowing that it will pass gave me confidence on the day. I'd got to 18 miles.
Yeah.
So on the day, I knew going into it, I was like, I know I can do this. Like I know for a fact, it doesn't matter how bad it gets out here today, I can do this. The only thing I was concerned about, the difference in training versus where I was doing this, was we were on a main road. It was the only path to the city from where I'd found the stone. And, cars are flying down there at 60 miles per hour. And the law is you have to travel into oncoming traffic in Scotland. Like, that's what we were advised to do for safety. And the police were great about it, but they were like, you've got to go into oncoming traffic. And, there's big logging industry up in Scotland. So these huge logging trucks would come past me. And we started at midnight. So the risk for me was taking the wrong step. And with 100 kilos, you take the wrong step, micro step, you're going to go over. And if you go over at the wrong time, and a truck's coming or a car's coming, it's bad news, it's done. And also I had my brother behind me for most of that as well. And I was very conscious about him being behind me. And if I got hit by a truck, he'd get hit by a truck too. So there was a lot of, that's where the pressure started to come in. When, maybe like dawn broke and it was, the traffic started to get a bit busier. And pressure started to come in, and the hills. The guy who planned the route for me, there was a couple of ways out of the town. This was the straightest line, but we didn't account for the elevation gain. And the elevation gain through Scotland was pretty tough anyway. But on that 100-kilo day, the tiniest incline made a huge difference, and so that started to really hit me. But yeah, going into it confident, but probably way too confident, to be honest, than I should have been.
How long were you out there on that first marathon?
What was it? 13 hours. It was pretty long. It was longer than we needed. So here was the thing about the marathon was the faster I did. So we would do 1.25 miles. We'd get refueled. We'd go again. That's how I'd do it. I'd sit on this little box. So the weight never came off me. I'd just sit on a box. We'd take all my hydration, pound as much food as I could, and go again. Couldn't drink whilst we're moving. We couldn't really do anything but the march. But the stops had to be short, and the pace between the stations had to be fast, because the one of the biggest factors that was going to stop me was just time on the feet in general.
Yeah.
So the slower that I was, the worse that the fatigue would get, and the feet and the ankles and the joints would start to get. So we had to power through as fast as we could. What happened was, coming up to mile 20, I had my kilt on, and it was the kilt that I'd wore to my son's funeral. It's a black kilt. It's the exact same kilt, and I'd never had it on in training, but I'd put it on. And on a kilt, you have a sporran, which is like a little bag that sits on the front. The sporran has a chain, and I'd had the chain around my waist, and then I don't know if you've ever seen a big powerlifting belt, like the big leather powerlifting belts, but I'd got that and strapped that over the top of the chain. And that would take some of the weight off the back. But it cuts into your skin a little bit, but is somewhat bearable. But by mile 20, I didn't realize that the chain had been cutting through my skin the whole time.
Good night.
And that was just shooting these pain signals to my brain, and my legs just started to shut down. So then the walk, the march started to become a walk. Then it started to become a crawl. Then when I was just on my feet, stood in the middle of the road, just trying anything to take the weight off me, bare my arms on my legs. And And then that was mile 20, and we talk about mile 20 all the time because it was the worst mile of everything.
It's a long way to go, man.
Yeah, and I'd been 18 miles in training, 20 miles, and my legs were shutting down. There had to be a limit of how far the body could go, and it's that's when I was like, maybe it's mile 20, maybe that's why I've not I can't go anymore. And I didn't speak that. You talk about spoken word. I didn't speak that to anybody else. It was all in my head. I was going through this battle. But at the same time, my grief came back. Like I was day one. My son had just died. Day one, floods of tears. I was crying, screaming in just pure agony. Not the stone, just I'd lost my son. And I don't know what it was, but I just thought I was going to let him down, and I could not bear that thought. Like I anything but letting him down. And I'd seen him watch me the whole time carrying the stone, and I felt proud of myself that my son was proud of me that I was carrying his stone back. And then I was watching me let him down. I managed to crawl to the next aid station, and I sat down on the chair, and I could hear whispers. My brother, who'd been with me every single mile of training, was talking to Neve like, I've not seen him like this before. Like I don't know. I think this is it. Like I think we might be done here.
Yeah, you're in new territory.
In purely new territory, uncharted. And and I sat there, and I was like, I can't do this. Like I can't let him down. Like there's no way I can let him down. And my son Jude, who's 8 years old, had written me some letters. He's Jacob's younger brother. He written me some letters, and I said, "Will someone just fetch me one of the letters from Jude?" And I opened letter number 1, which was for day one. I opened the letter, and it's a picture of me, him, my really good friend Luke Stoltman, and my other good friend Tom Stoltman, the Stoltman brothers, the strongmen, who live in the north of Scotland. And it was my happiest moment with Daddy is going to see Tom and Luke Stoltman win Europe's Strongest Man. It's just a happy memory, and it brought me a bit of happiness. I was like, I got to do this for Jude as well. Like, I've got to do this. So strap the weight back up, get back on the road, start marching again. Body shuts down after about 10 steps, almost fall over, readjust the straps a little bit, screaming again, like just frustrated. I've took the kilt off at this point. I've took the belt off, and I'm just holding onto these straps for dear life. And I'm like, I'm just going to do this for 8 miles. I get about another 500 meters down the road, and this pickup truck comes, and it's Luke Stoltman. The guy I've just seen in the photo. He lives maybe 40 minutes away from where I was, and it's Luke. And he says, he says something. I can't remember what he said, but I was like, I'm having a bad day. He says, don't worry. And he hops out his truck, and he's got a quote on the back of his t-shirt. It says, "Trust me, you will survive." Accidentally, but he's got this on his t-shirt. And he says, "You're going to do this." Steps onto the road and just starts marching towards Inverness. And that was it. We just marched for 8 miles, pretty much non-stop. And he didn't understand because he's a big guy. He weighs close to 400 pounds. And it was tough for him just marching 8 miles, But so he was putting an effort for himself. He didn't realize what I was going through, and I needed that. I needed somebody who had no empathy for me. He's like, "This is what we're going to do. We're going to do this." And then we pushed through to the final 8 miles. But that mile 20 was rough. That was a big moment for me, overcoming that. Like I've never experienced something. I've put myself through some difficult situations, but that was pretty deep, man.
Is all of this on film?
Everything's on film.
Are you guys going to release a full documentary off of this? Yeah,
we're doing a feature documentary on it. So we filmed that. We filmed the next 10 days. But I want to do some reshoots and stuff and make it look pretty. But I guess we've got a full recording, like a continuous recording of the heavy one, because we thought at one point it'd be good to get it into Guinness World Records. Guinness World Records don't sanction me doing 28 miles as an official marathon, so they won't do it as an official world record. But there's somebody wanted to watch the 13-hour recording or whatever it is, it's there. So there's, we weigh it, we calibrate a plate, we put the stone on there, you can see it weighs 100 kilos. When I get back, when I get to the finish line, we weigh it again to prove, it's still 100 kilos, and there's a continuous recording. And I think I also step on the scale with it on my back. And I think we were just over 500 pounds. I was a big guy at the time as well. So I was like 280, 290 pounds. So about 500 and something pounds on the feet for the marathon. Yeah. So, and then by the end of it, by the end of the 10 days, I was 250 pounds. So I dropped like 30 to 40 pounds worth of body weight running. And I was eating a lot. Like I was pounding a lot of food just to try and keep some energy in me. But I don't know, the rate you burn calories at with something strapped to your back as well is quite a lot. So I got away with a few McPlant burgers, vegan McDonald's. So
Dude,
Dang.
like the one of the beautiful aspects of what you just talked about was like how clear your why was and how strong that was, and how, you know, at that mile 20, the why is what got you back on your feet, you know. And we talk to students that we train all the time, and we're like, you better get your why squared away.
No, definitely.
And it is so important to figure out. And if you can't figure out why you're doing something, you probably just don't need to do it, right? Because there's going to come a moment that mile 20 moment, you know, that moment's coming for all of us when we endeavor to take on something that's harder than anything we've ever done before. And if you don't have that why squared away and it's not very clear to you, when the mile 20 moment comes, you're not going to get back up. You know, so it's just beautiful to hear how powerful that is to know, to have that squared away, and then to pull from that in the darkest moment, like, remember why I'm doing this, right?
Well, that journey got so much worse as well. Mile 20 was difficult, but the 450 miles that followed, I was battling infections, like it was really bad. And people have asked Neve and Luke what it was like. Like, did you ever think he was not going to do it? Did you think this? And they felt my why so much that they knew it was never a question of whether I was going to do it. I was crawling that thing. Like, I will.
So good, man.
It was going to happen no matter what. It was just a matter of time. Like, however long it took me, I was going to crawl that thing. I was going to get it done. You can't imagine if you haven't felt this before. If you have a powerful why attached to a promise that you make for yourself, you cannot break that promise. There is, if you fully believe in the why, you won't break that promise to yourself. It's very important that you don't. There's no question. There's no debating. It is a done deal. You've made a bond to yourself that you're going to do it, and you'll do it. And that's why I loved watching the documentaries, because I could see that in some of the stuff that you were doing. It wasn't a question of whether you were going to do it or not. I'd committed to doing this. There was a why behind it, and it's going to happen. I think that's hard to understand until you felt it. Like, when you feel that.
Come on, man.
Yeah, it's special, man. It is really special. You could achieve anything.
Yep. But at the same time, it's heavy.
Yeah, it's very heavy.
I try to teach this to people all the time, that when you're standing on the start line of a new journey, and it could be whatever, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be physical, but like, if you have fully committed, like in the sense that you're talking about, when you're standing there on the start line, you feel the burden. You're holding the burden of the totality of what you know you're about to have to do. But people don't want to feel that, right? So they'll stand on the start line of a new business. They'll stand on the start line of a big race, and they're just like, their attitude is, well, we'll see how it goes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, you know, I've trained, you know, I think I can do this. And the reason they do, and that is never going to lead to a successful attempt.
Yeah.
But the reason that they aren't willing to truly commit is they don't want to feel that pressure that creates.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure, man.
It is a lot of pressure, yeah.
You know?
That commitment, to me, I think this is where I see a lot of people get judgment, or people don't understand. But if you've committed to something, the failing it because of the why for me was worse than death. Like my price to pay, not that I don't want to make it too like fatal, but I was willing to die out.
Yeah.
Like there was that was the limit of it. So when we're talking about a physical journey, like there is no, I'll find out if I'm going to make it or not because I'm committed to it. I could not fail Jacob. I could not fail this journey. So much so that I was willing to pay the price of death. I was willing to pay the price of the permanent injuries. Like that was something that I was fully committed to. We spoke about this a lot of time. Like I hear some people talk about, I will never quit. I'll never give up unless a doctor intervenes. Like, no, the doctor intervenes would have been a weakness to me. Doctors would have intervened.
Yeah.
Doctors would have told me not to have done it a long time ago. So that couldn't have been an option for me. Like there had to be something as strong as I'll happily die out there. Like, and I would have happily died out there. And like at times, like we thought that might have been the case. Like, we had, you get strange heart palpitations. We were battling with like rhabdomyolysis at one point, a lot of kidney pain. A lot of things like that, where because there's no doctor intervention, because I don't want those voices in my head. I don't want people talking to me like saying that this is permanent damage right now. You're in that sort of territory. I didn't want that because it was a weakness. We were kind of like feeling it out a little bit. And for the first 8 or 9 days, I didn't tell any of these guys about like my heart and my kidneys because like that was something that I felt was out of my control. So I had to sort of balance it. And that is that point that is, I don't go out there and say, go do this, but there's a roof that we can reach for that is a commitment to a goal that is much, much further than most are willing to go to. And if the minimum barrier for entry is a bit of physical pain, and I'm just on about physical pain that will eventually pass with a bit of recovery, I think we all should be able to butt up to that at the very minimum. Beyond that, like permanent injury and death and things like that, is like, I still fully respect somebody if they've got a really strong why and a purpose as to why they're doing that. I get it from my perspective, and I understand how it seems foreign, but it's very, very powerful if that's your commitment level.
It is,
Yeah.
and I think you're exactly right. And I was going to say the same thing. We're not talking about that. This level of commitment that you're speaking of isn't something that applies to every single thing you try to do in life.
Not
like,
at all. Yeah.
There's only been one instance in my whole life that I can relate to the level of commitment that you're talking about, and that for me was in SEAL training.
Yeah.
I felt the same way there. I had. I started this journey. I was truly willing to die before I left there. You didn't go to the doctors. Like in SEAL training, like you avoided medical like the plague, right? Because you didn't care when you're in that spot where you're like, nope, I'm either here or I'm not going to leave here alive. Like, you don't go to medical. It doesn't matter what's happening to your body because, you don't want them to have the opportunity to pull you out of what it is you're trying to accomplish. So, we're talking about this type of commitment. We're talking about it because we want to prove, and I think you would agree, we want to prove to you it does exist. Man is capable of going to that level mentally. The human mind is that strong that you can take yourself there if it's necessary.
Yeah.
But these are like once or twice in a lifetime.
Yeah, for sure.
Type of events. And you really contrasted it very well with if the level of commitment is, physical pain that is eventually going to go away with some recovery. That's a 250-mile ultra marathon. That's a 100-mile ultra marathon. Like, we should all at least be able to live up to that level of commitment, right?
I think once you understand that as well,
Yeah.
and you realize that you can operate at that level, at the extreme level, like my baseline now, and this is a really mundane one, not even a 250-mile race. Like, I'm editing a documentary at the moment, feature documentary. It's been difficult. Like, it's been very, very hard, and it pales in comparison to what I did, but the commitment to it is a lot. Like, I commit a lot of my life to it. A lot of like relationships sometimes have to take a little bit of a pause, and I've committed because it's a very special story to me to tell. With the perspective up here of me understanding how far I can take it, the documentary does become somewhat easier, but it is still a commitment to make. And I think most people don't realize how much they can truly give to something. And if it's important to you, it doesn't have to be death or permanent damage or anything like that at all. A strong level of commitment is discomfort, is being outside of your comfort zone, is doing things you don't want to do. They don't have to be harmful. Like, I think that's the other thing is, like, sometimes people, you know, you might listen to Chad and, you know, think that, right, well, I need to go to that depth and that level of commitment. It's like, just start at commitment. Just start at being committed first. See how far that gets you, because it will get you far. It'll get you through most goals, most achievements. And if you want to try some of that once or twice, like say once or twice, I won't be doing that again.
Exactly.
You know, that is me done on that. Physically, I can't anyway, but like, that was a once in a lifetime thing that achieved everything it needed to achieve. I don't need to prove myself again in that, doing that. Maybe we'll do something else, but, you know, in terms of that is it. It's done.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys have anything up to this point? I'll step on y'all.
I'm just thinking the whole time, like, how does everybody not know about this? Like, everybody needs, I'm glad that y'all are working on something, because this is, like, you know, everybody needs to know about this.
I appreciate you saying that. We're doing the documentary. I didn't want to do the documentary. We did the documentary because of sponsorship commitments.
And also you have a charity.
We have a charity alongside it. So there was, you know, we'd already raised the money through the charity, though, which was good. So, you know, it was kind of already in the spot where I wanted to be. We're trying to make headstones for other bereaved parents. That's what I've sort of followed on from. But we were just making a YouTube doc to get the last little bit of message out there. And then we sent one of the staff members put a sizzler together, sent it out, and it had a lot of interest from studios and stuff. So now we're committed into making a documentary. But the idea of telling the story, I don't know, it's a difficult one when you're the guy in the story, like for me, because I've told everyone else's story before. I've never really told my own story. I've always believed, like, for me, like, I tell my story by living it. Like, that's how I'm gonna do it. I'll go out there and I carried a stone. That is I'm right. I guess I'm right in the story. So telling it's been difficult. But I don't know, that I still think there is some kind of taboo attached. I was carrying a headstone for my son. I think there's some difficulty for some people in like, grieving parents is one of those things that I don't know if people want to touch it or talk about it. So I don't know. Yeah, it hasn't really got out there. It didn't get much traction, which is fine. Like, that's what I was speaking to you about this morning. About, you said no one can take that away from you. No one can take away from you the lessons and the experiences that you had in those miles. Nobody can take away from me the connection that I did find with Jacob. He's no longer in the grave. I haven't actually been to his grave since I took the headstone there.
Wow.
I don't feel the need to. I don't feel guilty about it anymore. Like, the whole conclusion to that run was, you know, I was there at mile 20, and I'm watching Jacob. I can see him vividly. He's looking at me with a stone, and I'm asking him for strength. I get to the run. We're running through the hills of Scotland, the most beautiful landscapes you've ever seen. Jacob's with me. I'm talking to him. I'm telling him, I'm coming home, son. Like, this is what I'm bringing you the stone. The whole way through was a dialogue between me and him, 12 hours a day, just running through these mountains. And, you know, in my dark moments when I was ill and we had infections and stuff, again, like, I was talking to him, like, give me some strength today. Like, I need to get through this. Like, please, like, yeah, I need this. I need to bring you this stone home. I'm going to bring you the stone home. That's what, you know, I kept saying that. I get to the bottom of a cemetery, you know, the final mile, trying to finish strong. It's on the top of a hill. And I'm going up there, and for 480 miles, I'd envisioned this moment. I was going to cry. I was going to break down. I was going to cry. I was going to put the stone there. It was going to be this really emotional moment for me. I knew exactly how it was going to go, and I'm big on manifestation. So I was like, this is what's going to happen. Like, I'm going to be overwhelmed by this. And I get to the top of the hill, and it was just pure peace. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel any sadness, no tears. I felt fine, and I realized that I put the stone down. I'm at his graveside. And it was so plain to me what Erwin McManus had said to me all that time ago is, Jacob is not in the ground. How did I know he wasn't in the ground? He'd been with me the whole time. And, like, I'd told him that I was bringing him the stone, but I'd been speaking to him. He'd been there the whole time. So that 480 miles, like I really brought Jacob into my heart. And this location that I had felt so much pain over was just gone in an instant. I used to call that the center of my universe, and because it was just attached to so much pain, but it was just like that, gone in an instant.
Yeah, dude, I'll tell you what, man, so many parts of the story you've been sharing with us, I just see so many parallels to Scripture. It just brings to mind so many, like that final moment. You said you got there, it's like, I feel like it just brings to mind when Jesus on the cross, right before he gave up his life on the cross, he said, "It is finished." Like, the way you described it is like, I'm here. It's finished. Like, man, that's it's wild, man. And yeah, man. And two, another thing, Jesus commands us as his disciples to take up our cross and follow him. And man, if the Lord ever calls you, you're going to have a whole different perspective on what it means to take up your cross and follow Christ, because what you did is so similar in the physicality, the physicality, right, of, carrying that cross to the place where it is finished. It's like, and listeners, like, don't. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the physicality of it, and just the
bearing a heavy object on his
bearing
back.
the load, and what that feels like, and arriving to that place where it's like the mission was complete. Like you said, there was no, you didn't have the response you thought you were going to have, because it was done.
Yeah, I said this afterwards, that I felt that there's got to be something to physical pilgrimages like this.
Yeah.
In faith, throughout history. I can't tell people how healing it was. Like, it was, and I have said this, and I don't know if it's good advice or bad advice, not the way in which I did it, but if you were to do something physical and attach something or somebody, or a memory of somebody that you're struggling to process with, and if you're out there for days on a trail or on a run, and that you're doing it in honor of them, and I'm sure you've experienced this, doing it in honor of some of your fallen comrades, like, this is something that I think a lot of people have done and found healing in, but no one's put like a box around it and said, like, this can be helpful. And I think for some people who need that physicality and real practical way of grieving, and maybe don't get it through talking to people, maybe don't get it through therapy, maybe this is a way through. Like, maybe this could help some people. I don't think it's for everybody, of course I don't, but I can't tell you the shift that I had. Like, there was a lot of things that were not clicking right in my head and that I was struggling with. And I was a deeply hurt person. Like, and because I was a deeply hurt person, if somebody said something that upset me, or they said something about Jacob, or had the wrong conversation around it, it could hurt me. Like, and I could, I'd hold it in, and I think I was being stoic, and that I was, I wasn't impacting them, but it impacted people. Like, it affected people. I just didn't realize it. After this, that has completely shifted. Like, I can't explain how far it shifted, and it was instantly. It was the moment I arrived. It was done. That was it. It was finished. It was done. Because grief is attached to go to therapy. You got years and years of, you need time, you need to heal, and I'm not saying that those things don't work as well. But because those things exist, and that's really our only true perception of how to go through, like, grief and trauma and stuff. When I tell people this story, they don't really believe it. They don't think that it couldn't have been overnight. And I think people want that overnight fix as well. Like, people are like, well, I'm grieving, I'm struggling, I want that overnight fix. And and the point to that is that it wasn't also overnight as well. You know, it was years and years. It was meeting Owen McManus. It was training for 6 months. It was, 12 days of agony, and then it was overnight. The button was flicked off. The show was done at the end of it, but a lot led into that. And it wasn't like, I think with therapy and time and all that kind of stuff, maybe you get like a soft ending and it like fades off. With me, it was a line in the sand.
Yeah.
It was done. I think that might be the difference between doing something like a pilgrimage and committing yourself in that kind of way versus, using time, which probably is a great healer too.
Well, and it's also our perspective on grief is that it's just this like negative thing, and we don't want it. We don't want to experience it. If we're grieving over something, we want to try to figure out how to end it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But look at what this grief that you were experiencing has produced in your life.
Yeah.
It produced a story that will impact hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other people in a powerful way. The grief that you were experiencing is what has produced this conversation that we're having right now. You get confused. Blessed are those who grieve? What's that supposed to mean? What? You're seeing it. Jesus stood on a mountain, he preached a sermon, and he started out the sermon saying, "Blessed are those who grieve, for they shall be comforted." How is someone who's grieving, how are they blessed? Look at what we're doing right here. Like, look at the conversation that we just had. It's crazy. Dude, it's crazy, man.
I wish I could articulate that what you just said, that bit of a message from Jesus, because that is hard to tell people.
Yes.
And I wish I could, because it's to say losing my son was the worst thing that happened to me, but also the best thing that happened to me is very hard. People can't comprehend that. And it's even difficult for me to say. It's difficult. I almost feel there's a guilt there, but my life is not the way it is now. And I don't mean like success or riches or anything like that. I mean like a purposeful life, like something that is positively impacting other people. Like I wouldn't have found that. I was about money, cars. I wanted to run a business to be successful in the perception of other people. Like I wanted a Bentley. Like that was my biggest driving force, before I lost Jacob. And then losing Jacob, instantly material things became nothing to me. And it gave me a perception, which is the biggest gift I've ever had. But to try and explain to people, like, trust me, the grief that you're going through right now, the difficulty of losing that person will be the biggest blessing of your life. That's hard. I wish I had the words. I really do wish I had the words for that.
Yeah, man. And it's like, dude, it's just such an amazing testimony, and how it ties in and really represents what was meant by that. Blessed are those who grieve. Like what was, because man, you read that and it's a hard saying, but you understand that,
nobody picks that either.
Nobody
you
picks
see that and you
yeah.
like you would have never picked that. It's like, I'm not going to pick to intend, but he says it's going to come, and when it does, you will be better because of it.
So this is the thing I struggled with, and this will be interesting to hear you guys talk about it, is I remember after Jacob died, the first person who walked into the hospital room was a church pastor. I still remember his name, Nathan Smith. And he prayed for us. And I always remember thinking, what a brave man, like, I'm grieving over my kid. And I've never said that I was, any part of any religion, but he wanted to pray for me, and I thought it was incredible that he did that. I remember speaking to him, and I said, and we were talking about this. We were talking about it being somewhat of a blessing, because I'd had a perspective. This story gets a lot deeper. This is where the documentary goes. My mum's first son was stillborn, my oldest brother, Jason. My mum's mum's first son was stillborn. So there's 3 generations of stillbirth in our family. the first sons. And I already had a perception of what stillbirth was, and I'd seen how strong it had made my mum. My mum's a great person. You know, she went into created open doors, which was for alcoholics, and she would help alcoholics in the local area, and that was her thing that she created to help people. And she was this incredible nurse. But when I was speaking to Nathan in that hospital room, I said to him, like, why did this have to happen? Like, why for the perspective of wanting to help other people and, wanting to do good in the world? Because I knew straight away I wanted to do something after Jacob died. Like, it was instantly. Why did he have to die? And that's the thing I'd wrestled with for so long. Like, now I think, like, I accept that it's just the way it is and that it had to happen. And I think my question to Nathan was, why couldn't he enlighten me without taking my son? That was I guess the question I had back then. And I guess it's not a question as much anymore, but I think it's an interesting question to ask you guys and like put it out there.
Yeah. Those are difficult questions, and not that any of us completely understand the sovereignty of God and why everything happens the way it happens. But one thing that we can understand is this world that we are living in is not how it was meant to be in the beginning. And so we know, and we can be confident that we are living in a fallen world, a world that has sickness, has death, has evil, right? And in the beginning, before sin entered the world through the first man, it was perfect. But when sin entered the world, things changed for the rest of the course of human history. And so we are a part of this fallen world where there is this pain. People die. Terrible things happen. That's all due to that's all just due to the way the world is. The beautiful thing is that Almighty God does take these terrible things that do happen, and He, in His sovereignty, will work them for good purposes. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes
He doesn't
sense.
have to do that. He doesn't have to do that, but He does.
I could just be. The flip side of that is that I could just be in pain.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't have been.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
So
that makes sense. Yeah,
there's an account, a historical account in the Bible. It was Joseph, right? That gets sold. Or was it?
Yeah, with the coat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was Joseph, right? So there's an account in the Bible of a guy, and his brothers were very jealous of him. And essentially, his brothers sold him into slavery. And Joseph spent many years in prison. He ended up going to prison. He was in Egypt. And turns out later on, God uses Joseph to warn the area that there's a famine. He brings him Joseph becomes like the ruler of Egypt there, and he's working directly with the Pharaoh and all this stuff, and a bunch of people's lives are saved, right? And it's just this example of how this act or this deed that Joseph's brothers did, they meant it for evil. They sold him into slavery because they were jealous of him, and they never meant for any good to come out of that. They did it out of their own evil desires and their evil purposes, right? But God took that situation, and in his sovereign will and grace, He took that situation that was meant for evil, and He actually worked good out of it, right?
Actually saved the brothers and the family that sold him into slavery.
Saved the whole family that sold him into slavery. So yeah, the Almighty does work in that way. But yeah, the alternate is just to be. I'm really really excited to see as time goes, what the Lord does with you, man. Like, I'm personally excited to see what He does.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I know He wants you.
Well, I was just sitting here thinking, like, faith, I don't know. There's some people who I think would say there was that moment and they don't struggle with it very much, but a lot of people have a long time of a struggle kind of with faith. You know, there's that period where they don't have it and then they do. And, like, I would imagine your struggle would come from the fact that, like, the message of the gospel is that you can't do it on your own, right? And you need Jesus to save you. But, like, someone like you and who's done what you've done, you go, I don't need nothing. You know what I mean? It's I mean, like, hard things that I've done in my life, I have gotten to the end of it and had a little bit of a sense of, like, I can do anything. And when you walk with a 220-pound stone for 28 miles and then cut it down to 60 and walk another 480 and you get there and, like, you had that moment of it is finished, it's like, I would feel invincible.
Yeah.
And I would literally feel like I did this on my own.
Mm-hmm.
I can do anything. Mm-hmm. Like, I overcame the grief that I was feeling with on my own. But, you know, like, even if you did that by yourself, that's all those moments in my life. Even if you did a thing by yourself, it's like, I can't do everything by myself, you know?
You know, it's funny you say that what you just said rang true.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you said rang true. I think that's
I have those, like...
Yeah. That was the whole of losing Jacob. Like, I was angry at the world.
Yeah.
Possibly angry at God. You know, like, I think I even said that, like, why would He do this to me? Or, you know, why would God do this to me?
It's a legitimate question.
Yeah, and, like, so I'd had those feelings, and then I got through the grief of Jacob. I processed it, and I did feel very alone in that. Like, I felt like I had to do that all by myself. The end of the stone carry is very similar.
Yeah.
You know, all those kind of things. The same way I felt with Jacob back, you know, 6 or 7 months ago, and that something was not aligned correctly. There still feels like there is something else that's not aligned correctly. I assure you that. And, like, when we was out with Erwin and I was speaking to Erwin and was at the church, and when I've been at the church, and there is a sense and a feeling that feels completely different to anything else.
Yeah.
That maybe that is the thing that's missing.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, you're right. Like, I guess there's a difficulty in trusting and letting go. I think that's, I feel like I know I'm okay if I'm in control and I've got this. Like, I feel like that's probably like my default survival mechanism for myself. And I've always felt like that. Like, I have to carry it all. So yeah, but that's the whole point of faith, isn't it? Like, at some point you got to submit. Like, you have to let go. Like, you have to
surrender.
To self.
Surrender. Yeah. So it's probably where I'm getting stuck at the moment. Yeah.
But no, I just wanted to say and I don't want to say anything like out of turn here, but for me, it's cool that in a way, and I don't know your life and how you grew up, but, like, part of it, I don't know, it's cool to me to see because I had a great relationship with my parents, both of them, mom and dad, and but other people in my life haven't, and maybe their dad wasn't there, their mom wasn't there, and, like, I don't know, it's cool, like, even though your son died at birth and wasn't there, you stayed committed to him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
That's...
Well, that's an important thing to me. Yeah.
Like, that's just really you...
being there for my sons is very, that's like a core belief for me, that have to be there.
Yeah, it's just cool. Yeah. It says a lot about you.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's a really neat place that you're in right now, that you're not, you know, turned off to any one thing, and you're just kind of sitting in where you're at. And
I'm fully open-minded as well.
Yeah, you're extremely self-aware and honest, and so it's just really cool. And I think if and hopefully when God calls you, I think you will look back on a lot of this stuff that happened and see it in the same light you've seen it, but also see a lot more in it and see that, you carried that stone for also were sustained by something else and also carried it for a lot more people than just Jacob.
Yeah.
And I think you'll even see that when you release that documentary, that a lot of people gain strength from this. And
that's nice to hear. There was a few reasons as well. Like there was that point of lifting that stone for other families and other people.
Yeah.
The story, like if we had the hours and hours, like I'd talk, like there was points of faith throughout that where we spoke tons of times where there might not have been any other explanation than divine intervention. Like there's a time where I almost died on a hill, and this light shone across the valley and showed me the direction to way to go. Like I could explain the story, but I swore to myself. I was up there by myself. I knew for a fact that it was my brother stood on the other side of the hill with the car flashing the light to show me where to go because I was lost and my phone had died. Didn't have any food or water, the sun had gone down. It was dark, and I had this really bad infection. And this light shone across the valley and screamed my name, and I screamed back, and I bolted it for the gap I could see in the tree because I'd seen where the light had come from. And when I got there, it was a path. There's no way to get a car up there. And I carried on running for like 30, 40 minutes because I could see the path at that point because the moon was lit and I could see a direction. And I get down the road to nobody's there. These guys are supposed to be on the other side of this trail for me. And I get to the road and nobody's there. I carry on running. And then eventually I see a car coming up and it's these guys just arriving. And I was like, how did you get down from the hill? Like, I don't understand. Like, how did you get down from the hill? They're like, what do you mean? He's like, we just got here. I was like, you was up on the hill, you flashed the lights, you shouted my name, like 100%, you was up on the hill. I was like, George, we just got here. And then the even more interesting thing is and I'd been running for about 20, 30 minutes past the point of hearing the shout. When I got to the road and when I met with them, and I said that to them, Luke, my brother who was in the car at the time, says, Neve, what did I say to you 30 minutes ago? And they would have been 40 miles away from where I was at that point. And Neve says, we heard a man screaming, like we heard a man shouting, and we thought it was you. But they were 40 miles away from me, and they heard that shout. And to me, it was my brother Luke. So I've that story in my head's called Luke on the Hill. But as I've been writing that down for the film, I don't know what that was. Like I don't have an explanation. And people would say you were dehydrated, you were hallucinating, all these kind of things. And like it genuinely, in all honesty, like I'd been dehydrated and I'd been hallucinating on that. That wasn't the time period. I just ran out of water. I just run out of food.
Yeah.
It would have gone bad. Like if I'd lost my direction because it was pitch black on this trail. You couldn't even see the trail markers. And my torch was dying, all this kind of stuff. But I wasn't hallucinating. It was a very, very real moment that happened. And I know the only people who believe me is Neve and Luke because they were there and they'd seen me and spoke to me. But it's not the only moment that happened out there, but it's a significant moment that happened where I was like, what is that? Like, what is the explanation for that? So, the whole journey there was moments where we were like, what is all of this? Like, there's something more to this that we don't know about.
Yeah, man. That's the human experience. Yeah, there's so much more going on than we like to even realize, because when you even open your mind to those things and you start to contemplate them, well, that's not easy. Like you don't know where that's going to lead you, you know. And dang, man, this was just we got to wrap it up. It's almost 4:00, but dude, thank you so much, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't even think that we need to carry on with this documentary about my life. I mean, that was just
Awesome.
That was so powerful, man.
Yeah.
It really was.
Thank you for having me on, man. I appreciate you guys being so open-minded and talking me through stuff. Like, yeah, it's much appreciated.
Where can obviously, what's the easiest way for people listening to this to find you, follow you, you and your team?
Yeah,
obviously.
Mulligan Brothers. So if you want to watch the documentaries, the project that we're going to do with you is going to be on Mulligan Brothers. There's Mulligan Brothers interviews where you can just watch the full conversation that we have and have had throughout the day. We kind of chop a long form out of it. But the piece that we put out there is a documentary piece that goes on the Mulligan Brothers. I think it's just called Mulligan Brothers on YouTube. It's the one with the biggest following on there, and there's a whole host of different wide variety of documentaries, and yeah, that's definitely the best place if you wanted to follow up for sure. There's some really cool guys and some really cool women out there who've been on our channel and told their amazing stories too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the work you're doing, man.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up.
Is this the last episode?
No, this is on the new one.
Okay. All right. The 307 podcast is moving too. Don't forget.
Yeah, the 307 podcast is moving to the 307 podcast channel. If you're already on the 307 podcast channel, welcome. If you're still on the 307 project channel, then I'll attach a link to the 307 podcast channel in the description of this episode.
Sweet.
And also I'll attach links to the Mulligan Brothers YouTube channel, also Jordan's Instagram, and all that good stuff so that you guys can find him. Reach out to him, man, if this conversation meant something to you, and let him know that you appreciate him, because I know I do. So thank you, guys. Love you. Enough said.